My fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, welcome. The purpose of today's speech is to have a 5 to 7 minute conversation about how to taste wine at a wine tasting, which is distinct from how to taste wine at a restaurant, the subject of my next Toastmasters project. However, before we get into that, let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? And that is, am I qualified to speak to you as a wine expert? And the answer to that is a resounding no. That's because I that's because I am not a wine expert. I am a regular Joe having a 5 to 7 minute conversation with regular Joes and regular Janes, and I mean that in the nicest way, about information given to me by a wine expert. As a matter of fact, my friend is so much an expert that his clients will typically pay him $250,000 for bottles of wine from a vineyard 3 to 5 years in the future. That being said, this is what he told me. He said, Leonidas, there are 5 things you need to know, that you must know, about how to taste wine at a wine tasting. I'm going to list those 5 things and then we'll go over them one by one. First, he said, notice the color of the wine. Look for the legs. Smell the wine, taste the wine. And finally, notice the aftertaste. So let's take the first one. Notice the color of the wine. What he said was, Leonidas, while it may be easy to tell the difference between a red, a white, and a rosé, some reds are darker than others. Some whites are paler than others. Older red wines will take on a lighter tone, where newer ones are a deeper purple. Conversely, older whites will be darker than their younger cousins. And then he looked at me and smiled and said, and a rosé is a rosé is a rosé. 2, look for the legs. No, not the legs of the hostess serving the wine legs. Swirl the wine in the glass and watch the wine run down the inside of the glass. The longer and slower the legs run, the denser the wine will be, which means it will most likely be well aged. Third, smell the wine. Wine connoisseurs often talk of a wine's nose. A good whiff should reveal subtle but recognizable smells like flowers, honey, vanilla, or citrus. Like color and density, a wine's nose is another way to get to know it. Fourth, taste the wine by taking a generous portion and swirling it around in your mouth. Notice sweetness or acidity. Usually, the more acidic a wine, the more tannins it has. Mature, finely crafted wines will strike a good balance between sweetness or fruit and tannins. And tannins are a yellowish brown molecule responsible for the acidic taste in citrus. And finally, notice the aftertaste. It is preferable by many wine experts that the wine have a long, slow aftertaste. It is the best wines that will usually leave this kind of a lasting impression. So what did we learn? We learned that there are 5 things you must know about how to taste wine at a restaurant. Sorry, at a wine tasting. Those are, notice the color of the wine, look for the legs, smell the wine, taste the wine, and finally, notice the aftertaste. We also learned that there is a distinction between how to taste wine at a restaurant and how to taste wine at a wine tasting. We also learned that how to taste wine at a wine tasting, sorry, at a restaurant, is the topic of my next Toastmasters project. And finally, we learned that tannins are a yellowish brown molecule responsible for the acidic taste in citrus. And to give you a bit of a teaser of my next project, how to taste wine at a restaurant. If you're tasting wine at a restaurant and the waiter or waitress pours a small portion of wine in a glass and hands it to you for your approval, what you should not do is taste it. Madam Toastmaster, back to you.